at some point, you just gotta feel bad for the guy. And I think for most Montreal Canadiens fans, we have felt so bad for this guy for the better part of the past, well, let's just say 7 months or so. It has definitely not been an easy time in Montreal for Patrik Laine. And that's a shame, because it's been very well documented that Laine, the guy, Laine's spouse, Laine's representation, they all like Montreal. They love what the city has done for him. They love the warm welcome and the enthusiasm that Habs fans have greeted this player ever since his arrival last season with the Habs. But unfortunately, this is a situation where Patrik Laine, his health, and his future with the team is so up in the air that we may have to start talking about some potential options here. Let's just dive into the scoop before we go over why we are bringing this up again. Patrik Laine, 27 years old, 6'5", 216, right-handed winger, and a guy making $8.7 million a year until the end of this season. The contract expires as a UFA. This dollar amount, of course, is very, very high. It's the same money that Sidney Crosby is making. It's about $1 million or $2 higher than some of the best players on the Montreal Canadiens. And the verdict on Laine's season is that he just wasn't really used. He's been out for so long. He only had 5 games played, 1 assist. Definitely did not provide the same goal-scoring spark that he did in 2024-2025. Say what you want about the second half of Laine's season last year, but those 20 goals in 52 games, the consistent power play scoring that admittedly was only consistent in bunches, Marty St. Louis said it himself. Part of the reason the Canadiens even made the playoffs last year is because this guy was on top of his game. Maybe not the entire time he was on top of his game, but he was on top of his game in a very select few segments of the year. Yes, it is true. Patrik Laine only had 1 goal in his last however many games this is for the Montreal Canadiens in the season. But you cannot deny the power play stints, you cannot deny the hat trick, you can't deny what he did in the first however many games this is. Of course, we recognize Laine was also hurt to start out 24-25, so his first game for the Canadiens last season was December 3rd, but he scored then, he scored the next game, he then scored 2 games after that, and then had 5 goals in 3 games a little bit after that too. Pre-Christmas break, Patrik Laine was a man unhinged. He was so good. That power play ripper, that slap shot, you just tossed it over to him. He looks like prime Ovechkin just teeing up those 1-tees. But he's been hurt now. And this is a thing where even at the end of last season in the playoffs, he was also hurt. Against Washington, he didn't play the full 5-game series. He only had 2 games. Which, in a way, you could say was quite beneficial for Montreal. It's like, oh, Patrik Laine's absence on the top power play against Washington in the playoffs last year opened the door for Ivan Demidov to get put onto that unit instead, which opened up a new generation of Montreal Canadiens power play, and that in itself is a positive story. But for Patrik Laine, the guy, when you look at where the Canadiens are this season, you look at where he is at personally, there's no shot that this guy is going to be a top 6 forward in the Montreal Canadiens this season. Which is why we head over onto what was talked about by Pierre Maguire on the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. Take a look at this. Will the Montreal Canadiens be able to find a suitable role for Patrik Laine? Pierre Maguire said on the Sick Podcast, I don't know where he fits on this lineup right now. Who is he better than in the top 6 of Montreal? And that's a really good question. Say what you want about whether or not Oliver Kapanen is a bona fide top 6 player, but when you look at who is getting the opportunities, who is getting the reps, it's very hard to argue that Patrik Laine and his inevitable return should dethrone anybody in that top 6. In fact, this is what Pierre Maguire says further in that same Sick Podcast episode. Patrik Laine may have to ask his agent and ask for a trade. I don't know where he fits in this lineup right now. The article on HabsFanatics.com that we are looking at then dives into some of the extra discourse. The chemistry is working with the Montreal forwards right now, and inserting a player who may be gone soon would make no sense. Keeping that kind of distraction around a group focused on the playoffs is a risky bet. The timeline is clear. This Wednesday, February 4th at 3 p.m., the NHL shuts the books ahead of the Olympics. A full trade freeze will be imposed on all teams until February 22nd. That leaves roughly 48 hours for the GM to find a dance partner in this complex situation. Now, February 4th, that's tomorrow. It's going to be less than 24 hours by the time tomorrow afternoon rolls around. Dragging this uncertain saga all the way to March is not appealing internally. The writer of this article says they'd be surprised to see if Laine is actually with the Canadiens after the trade freeze. We saw a similar scenario with the Kings and Philippe Deneau just before the holiday freeze. And I do think that these freezes setting, let's just say, premature trade deadlines is a trend that we're going to start seeing pop up more and more. We did see at the last holiday freeze, not just the Philippe Deneau trade went down, but also the Mason Marchment trade went down. So NHL teams are active, they are discussing what's going on, and if there is a team that could potentially, I don't know, try to absorb Patrik Laine and his cap hit and say, okay, well, if this guy wants an NHL job, maybe he can skate with us, maybe we can see if he is a fit here, maybe he can try to reinvent himself and set himself up for free agency in 2026. That seems like a pretty reasonable bet. I don't think any team would be acquiring Patrik Laine because they genuinely think that he's going to step in and become that point-per-game guy that he was with Columbus a few years ago. It's been a rough couple of seasons for Patrik Laine, with limited games played and injuries holding him out. So at this point, I don't think any NHL franchise has the guts to fully commit their next few years to him and offer him an extension, let alone at a dollar amount that's at $8.7 million a year. You ain't no Sidney Crosby, bud. I'm sorry. Going back over to the article, it says that an inevitable decision before Wednesday is in the Patrik Laine wheelhouse. The Canadiens control the medical narrative for now, but the hourglass is running fast. If Laine isn't traded by Wednesday, managing his return to play will become a major headache. Expect Kent Hughes and his phone to ring before then. Several teams are desperately searching for goals. This article says the LA Kings could potentially go out there and try to find a goal scorer like Laine, but I think the Kings might have some bigger fish to fry. They've been linked to Panarin and Pettersson as well. I would much rather see either of those two guys if I'm an LA Kings fan rather than Patrik Laine, but hey, to each their own. Maybe they could get all three. Pettersson, Patrick, and Panarin. Get 3 peas in a pod for the LA Kings and shell out the rest of your future and your prospects. But with all that said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you agree with this assessment that Patrik Laine might have it in his best interests to ask for a trade, to go to his agent and make a request to be moved? Because with the Montreal Canadiens, this is not a fit for him anymore. He likes it here. His spouse likes it here. We loved Patrik Laine a year ago, but the Montreal Canadiens, they're in a different spot now. They're a wildcard team, and like an actual wildcard team that was top 3 in the Atlantic that just kind of slipped down. They don't necessarily need Patrik Laine anymore. And that's quite sad, but I do think it's the truth. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Trolls 99, and bye.